In at number 10, we have the Bronto. But what exactly is the Bronto so good at gathering? And you could kind of put the Diplo in this sort of niche, you could call it as well. But the thing that the Bronto is great at gathering is obviously berries, and maybe you could gather a little bit of wooden thatch with it by just knocking down trees with its tail as well. It is quite sizable, so that is something which you can do, but I would mainly use this thing for gathering berries. And the reason why I say the Diplo as well is the Diplo is kind of an easier alternative to the Bronto in some ways, as you can passive tame it. You can also knock out tame the Diplo as well. Don't know why I said Ziplo. The Diplo with a zip line, something stupid like that. Either way, very good at gathering berries in very large quantities due to a large tail, which can give you a large area, like surface area for gathering berries. Then the real thing you have to look out for is this thing not getting killed if you're on a server, because it is quite a large creature, so you'll probably want cryos. Next up, we've got the Angler, and this gathers another extremely useful resource, which again, like the berry, you can gather with your hands, but it is a lot better at gathering this resource than using your hands, and that is silica pearls, if you didn't know already. And silica pearls are an extremely useful resource across every single arc map used for like electronics, and sometimes even saddles for creatures as well. The Spino saddle is one I can use for an example there, and I think maybe the UT saddle uses it as well. Either way, some saddles use silica pearls, but it's mainly things like electronics and all of that, and stuff you make in a fabricator which use silica pearls. And black pearls come into equation as well, but you get those in very different ways. So silica pearls is what you use this thing for gathering for, and it kind of does pack a punch, so I guess you could gather a bit of meat and hide with it. Probably more fish meat because you're going to be fighting underwater creatures, but still, it can do a little bit of that. But mainly for silica pearl gathering, this is going to be your go-to creature. And if you kill it, you can get loads of angler gel, which is actually kind of useful for lighting torches with. Next up, we got the Achatina, and this is essentially just a snail, which makes cementing paste passively for you, and it is actually a pretty good creature for that job. You just set it on wandering, boom. Also, I'm going to put the dung beetle here as well for making fertilizer, because that is another great thing. And although they don't really gather it, they still make it. And yeah, dung beetle and this thing, they're very similar size. This requires sweet vegetable cake to tame. The dung beetle can be tamed with spoiled meat really easily. They make cementing paste. Dung beetles make fertilizer. Very useful small creatures. Don't really take up that much space. In at number 7, we have the Megatherium, and this is my prime creature for gathering any kind of chitin because of the buff where it has, where essentially it can just shred through any insect with absolute ease. You take this into one of the bigger caves on the island, for example. I think, if I'm correctly thinking, not the massive because that's got lava in it. The cave of the hunter will probably be alright. There are definitely some bigger caves. The insect cave is obviously one. I'm not sure what artifact that has as well. Just the bigger cave is going to be easier. Some other maps, all the caves on Scorched Earth will be fine using a Megatherium because they're all massive. But either way, you know, if you don't have cryos on you, pick a bigger cave. If you do, it doesn't really matter. The insect cave is the go-to on the island, obviously, because it's got the most insects in it. It is called the insect cave, and this thing has an insane buff against insects. Like I said, it's kind of sort of a rage buff, you could call it, and it just deals extra damage towards them. That's why it's really great killing the broodmother, as it spawns in loads of little spiders, and then, you know, it kills one of those spiders, and then it gets that buff, and then it deals even more damage to the broodmother, and it will deal even more damage to any other creature. Just has to be constantly killing insects for that buff to refresh, and since the broodmother is constantly spawning out spiders, it works. And for the caves, there's loads and loads of insects in it, but you can obviously go to the kind of magma biome on Ragnarok as well. That's another great shout, because obviously this B-roll was shot on Ragnarok. So there are so many different ways to use this creature to gather chitin, or even to gather elements from doing the broodmother. So a really great gathering tame. Next up, we've got the Mantis, and this is an all-rounder really. It can equip any kind of melee weapon, not including tech ones. You know, if it could, that would be absolutely insane, but it can't equip tech melee weapons. Either way, swords, pikes, hatchets, picks, sickles, you name it, and if it's not tech and it's a melee weapon, this thing can equip it. For this is the purpose of the B-roll. I've got swords on because I'm gathering loads of mutton and hide and meat just from general creatures. That's kind of what I use it for the most on Ragnarok. But if you put some hicks on it, metal picks, of course. I wouldn't really use stone picks, and you probably easily have a metal pick by the time you tame one of these things, as it is somewhat irritating to tame, requiring a ghillie suit, some bug repellent, and you'll need deathworm horns or woolly rhino horns. Both, you know, you'll probably have a metal pick by that stage. But you can see me gathering some mutton here, and it really does gather a lot of it. But again, chuck some metal picks on it, gather loads of metal, and even chuck some metal hatchets on it and gather loads of wood. And it's just, there's so many great uses for this creature. We're gathering so many resources that I have to put it on this list. It's just so versatile in all of its resource gathering that obviously I had to include it. And it's also huge fun to go around on this thing, which actually kind of does improve how much you gather, because if you have fun when you're gathering creature and you're not just on a stego, which is really slow and just frankly quite boring, then you're going to actually gather more resources because you'll feel like you want to gather more because you're having so much fun on that creature. Either way, Mantis, great gathering tame. In at number 5, we've got the Beelzebufo, and this has a huge use in Ark for gathering any kinds of cementing paste, and especially on ASA. And the reason why I say that is insects no longer have levels in ASA, so it is even easier to kill loads of insects to gather loads of cementing paste with this creature. That is how it gathers cementing paste, by the way, if you didn't know already. You just kill insects and you get loads of cementing paste. Another great reason to go into the insect cave on the island, obviously apart from the artifacts which you'll find on the end of each cave, but still, going with the Megatherium, get loads of chitin, going with the Beelzebufo, get loads of cementing paste. There's just so many great things to have insects in Ark. Like if insects were removed from the game, chitin, so hard to get, which means like Pteranodon saddles and all of that, really hard. And cementing paste gone, like really, apart from beaver dams obviously, and that's such an essential resource for making things like metal structures and most of the fabricated items, and quite a lot of saddles as well. So, you know, insects are a really crucial part, and the fact that this can gather one of the most essential resources in the game, being cementing paste, really does make it a great gathering creature. And I urge you, if you haven't already, if you're just stuck on doing beaver dams all the time, get yourself a Beelzebufo to get that cementing paste. Next up, we have the Shadowmane, and most people don't think of this as a gatherer of resource, gatherer, I meant, not gathery, whatever that means, but for all of your meat and your hide, this is one of the best creatures out there. And the Thyla is another great shout as well. It's just I prefer the Shadowmane because it is significantly more mobile, and it also works in the water, which the Thyla doesn't. It is a better creature than the Thyla. The Shadowmane just is miles better, but it is significantly harder to tame, and it's kind of locked behind Gen 2. Not sure if it's on Fielder, might not be though. Either way, doesn't spawn on the island, or I'm pretty sure any of the free DLCs. Again, may spawn on Fielder, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Quite confident, but someone can correct me on that. So it is a little bit harder to get in terms of all of that. Just pretend to talk about the Thyla otherwise. But yeah, so great at gathering all that meat and hide. And yes, Gigas and Cochrodonsauruses are great as well, but they're just a bit too big and bulky for me, and this thing really does pack a punch in the damage department, especially considering we can charge it up over time to deal one massive amount of damage all in one go. It really is a great creature. It's no wonder that this thing does bosses, and also is a great meat and hide gatherer. In at number 3, we have the Theri, and this is actually one of the best resource gatherers for berry, wood, thatch and fiber, which like barely any other creatures can gather that all in one go, and albeit maybe the Mantis can, apart from the berry side of things, still it's nice to have it all in one creature without the use of any weapons whatsoever. And it can even gather meat and hide quite well too, which most herbivores can't even do. They just can't passively pick up meat and hide when they kill a creature. You have to get off yourself and harvest it, whereas the Theri can. And also its saddle is unlocked at level 69, which, you know, that's a joke that loads of my viewers enjoy. So I've even met Michael Rosen in real life. That was cool. Either way, to do with the Theri, it's just a great all-round gatherer for all of those basic resources. Again, with that perfect saddle level, you really can't deny it for being such a great resource gatherer. And I feel like it gets a lack of respect in the resource gathering world, and these resources are some of the most essential you'll find in the game. Like, try and do Ark without wood, fiber, thatch, berries, and that, like, it just doesn't work. You can't craft narcotics, you can't craft tools, you can't craft structures, and just there's so many things you can't craft without those resources. And albeit it does seem a bit late for those resources. You're going to need those resources throughout the whole game, so it's never too late to tame a creature like this and use it for all of your resource gathering needs. In at number 2 is the Desmodus. And to this day, this creature gathers a resource which no other Ark creature can, which is blood bags. Obviously, you can kind of gather it yourself with the syringe, but that is so slow and so crude these days that you might as well tame yourself a Desmodus, albeit you do need blood bags to tame them, so you are going to still have to use that old blood syringe to get your first one. But after you get your first, even like really low level, I would say go for the lowest level you can find first and just farm blood bags for ages, and then you don't even have to farm for ages actually. They gather them really quickly, and then boom, you can get yourself the highest level Desmodus you can find like that, because you have thousands and thousands of blood bags to your disposal. And you can even make sanguine elixir with it as well, which is an absolute cheat for taming. A third of it is just done like that, click of a button. Like, no other resources in that. Like, maybe you get resources like that in the Love Evolved event, but you can have this all year round, and they spawn on Fjorda, which is a free DLC map, so they're very accessible to all Ark players really, apart from Switch and mobile. Sorry about you, but Xbox, PC, PS4, where most of the player base lies, you can get yourself a Desmodus and start farming those blood bags to get sanguine elixir and just to tame other bloodstalkers and Desmoduses. And in at number 1 we have the Anki, and also I'm going to put the Dodic here as well, as they kind of go hand in hand. But the reason why the Anki is here in the B-roll is because the Anki is the more used and preferred one because it can gather a lot more metal, but the Dodic is pretty much the best gatherer out there as well for all the things which a hatchet would do, and the Anki does everything which the pick would do. So, you know, like you say, what are the most essential tools in Ark? You'd probably say the pick and the hatchet. So, the pick and the hatchet, Dino equivalent, is in at number 1. Obviously, the Anki is the B-roll here again, but I am talking about the Dodic as well. Either way, let's start with the Anki, since that's what the B-roll is on. It's just because I didn't have any Dodic B-roll. I should really make some actually, but I don't really have the time at the moment. Either way, this thing, it acts like a pick, so it's going to gather loads of flint, and it's going to gather loads of metal, and you can even whack trees with it as well and get loads of thatch. Whereas the Dodic is going to get you loads of stone, and it's going to get you loads of wood. And I'm pretty sure they can't gather berries. That's what I meant to say. I'm twisting my words at this point. It's been a long day. Either way, I'm pretty sure they can't do that, but you don't need them for it. Also, if they can, no, I'm pretty sure they can. It just destroyed that bush. Okay, take that back. They can, and the Dodicus does the role. Best resource gatherers. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you enjoyed it, as I did enjoy making it. And as always, comment down below, what is your favourite Ark gatherer, and also, do you agree with my list, or would you change it? And I'll see you all later.